Good morning, everyone. It's Joker, and today we are back with another slime video and the final video for Heroes Jubilee 34 Blitz. Part 2 of boss battle against the Albedo Shizu. You'll notice that my score has gone up. It's now above 600,000. That's because I kept on trying to use my Visions of Coleus team from the first video, and eventually I got very, very lucky and managed to get a Blanc ult, a Violet EX ult, and a Jean EX ult. And Jean also naturally crit. So she did like 1.8 million damage or something like that. So it pushed me up to 194, pushed me above the 600k barrier, and this is where I will sit. But today we're going to be using a bunch of like older teams, not so great teams, just to give you guys some more options. Heads up, Vengeance is not good here, so I don't even test him out. But let's just go ahead and get started. Alright, so first up is we're going to use like a half Overlord team. So this is assuming you have Ainz and you have Rimuru, but then you don't have like any of the big time supports that I've shown off. You don't have Shizuka, you don't have Albedo or the new Shizu. So we're going to use mostly all free-to-play characters. Octagram Lumi is free, she is skill-fused. Aaron and Isis are both available in the Flashback Bazaar, and then Traya is a very good green orb changer, but unfortunately no longer available. So this team is all about just getting as many stacks of Rimuru as possible. Ainz is giving the extra 50% protection gauge, Isis is giving the extra 50% gauge across the board, so that's already 90% extra protection gauge alongside the charms. That's another 40%, so a lot of protection gauge coming on here. We have a bunch of, green orb changers, so we can pretty much make something out of nothing. And then we'll just be stacking up the Lumi buff to its maximum cap of 80%. And then Ainz will get, hopefully his EX ult. We don't have any orb or ult swappers here, so I think what actually ends up happening is I just send normal ults, because it's better to send normal full buffed ults than to just try and hold on to it and wait for just one EX ult, because sending, like 3 or 4 normal ults is going to be a lot better than or trying to hold on and sending 5 greens and no ult until the very, very end, because we don't have like a bunch of buffs, right? We have the permanent ult buff, which is passive, and then we have Ainz's buff, which is, it's expensive, 80 points, but it gets reset every time you use Rimuru, so you can use it multiple times over and over and over and over again, because as long as you have points, which we will definitely have points on this team, you can do okay damage with this team. It's just you're not doing big time millions of damage with Ainz himself. So it's all focused on orb changing, all focused on resetting, getting that stacks of Lumi in, and then just sending as many Ainz orbs as possible. So here, we've got an Ainz ult. His buff isn't going to affect anybody else, right? No one else is on Stern of Spirit or Commander. Well, maybe Lumi is on Commander. I don't actually remember that, but I mean, I can check that while this is playing, actually. But like his personal magic buff is a personal buff. So he's not really supporting anybody else and attempting to make them do more damage. Lumi would help other people do more damage because it's a passive ult buff increase, but it's not anything to write home about. Is Lumi on Commander? Okay, Lumi is on Commander, so she would get the crit buff, but that's it. And she's an AoE, so we're not going to do too much damage with her either. But yeah, I mean, this is the team, this is the strategy, so just send the ult, buff Ainz, send the ult, get as many stacks, 50k. Oh, we didn't even get anything there. We didn't even use his buff. Unfortunate. But yeah, this is the team. We're going to get a score here. Not a great score, but a score. And I'm going to say that about pretty much all of the teams that we're showing off today in this video, is that you're going to get a score. And it's literally just to help you guys out and to try and give you some options in case you don't have the big time sweaty team strats that I've been using with the Visions of Coleus team, or the full Overlord team, or full as it can be with good units, because Albedo is not a good unit for this stage. But Shizu definitely is. But yeah, that's it. I think this is our third stack of Lumi. And then we'll get one more. We have one more turn left after this, so 161k on that nuke, and then the Ainz orbs doing 17 to 21 each. And then the final turn, I mean, we might already be stacked up with Lumi. Who knows? It doesn't really matter, though. So we've got 2 stacks of Rimuru, 300 points. We just need 1 orb change here, so Isis will come out. We'll use Tria's orb change, and then we'll put 1 more stack of Despair, which is, lowering the ult damage, or ult resistance for Shizu, which does increase our damage. And then, yeah, there's the final stack of Lumi. And heal, and reset, and also give 2 stacks to everybody. Yeah. I mean, honestly, like, I didn't make a video of it, but you could take this team and you could put Cabby in here instead of Rimuru. You would do even less damage, because Cabby would, well... Yeah, you'd do less damage, because Cabby's not stacking any element buffs, but he's definitely a green leader, and it'll definitely give you a lot of gauge and a lot of ults, so you could send an ult, like, pretty much every turn after you get Cabby up, which, I mean, could be cool, but Cabby doesn't reset, so it's an option. But there we go, we hit 766k, not overly good, but, it's something to start with, right? Let's move on. Alright, next up is everybody's not favorite team, but also a good team, the best team. Well, best, I guess, is subjective. But the idols, right? Rimuru, Lumi again, Isis, Shizuka, Shuna, and Mirai. No Tsubasa, because the Shizu is a single target, and we're not getting much attack out of her, so we're just going to run this. I mean, it'll work fine. You won't do damage, because it's only 5 turns, and this is very, very much a long-term stacking team. It doesn't have the big-time buffs to even attempt to make it kind of a burst team, unlike, the Ainsmaru team, the Visions of Koi's team. Like, it has the power to do things. You just have to be very, very careful with how you play around with the buffs and getting ults. This team is a bunch of just small 25-point buffs, and you're just stacking multiple different things at very, very low rates. So you end up by turn 6, like, you're not doing that much damage. But you are invincible, so you're going to take like 2 hits here, and you're never going to take a lick of damage again. And you'll just slowly rack it up over time. And Shuna's here to swap out ults, so you can actually get EX ults here. The bind is not important at all, because we're resetting the skill costs, and even if we didn't need since we're not using the future hand of greens, like, next hand is not guaranteed, but Rimuru's converting 3 and 3 to 6 greens anyways, so it's not a huge deal. So we're getting magic buff from Rimuru, we're getting the live mode from Mirai, we're getting alt buff from Lumi, we've got the other live mode and alt resistance down from Shizuka. The weakness strike buff and the heal on Shizuka's other skill is useless here, because we are type neutral, so there's no point in using it. But it is useful to, alternate between live modes between Mirai and Shizuka. That way, every single hand has the live mode active at any given point, while the other one is getting its cost reset. So, I mean, it does work. Right here, we'll bring Shizuka in for Isis. We've used the green buff now, so now greens are giving us a lot of extra stuff here. Swap the ult resistance down, the live mode is active. Rimuru is going to stack, is it 12%? 12 or 10? I think it's 10% magic attack. And yeah, you just continue like this for 6 turns, and you do slowly but ever increasing damage. And it's not the most, but it's something. And people really like the idol team. It's horribly limited to where you got to have some units on Pretty Sparkle, or it's just not a good team. And people will argue that it is a good team. It's not a good team. It's a good team if you have all the available options, and the good options being the actual idols. Because Bride, Shuna, and Anniversary Milim, they're fine. They're not going to be the backbone of a high damaging team. So unless you have Mirai and Shizuka and Shuna, this team isn't quite as good as people would think it is. But it can do damage if given the proper amount of time to build up, and also be type advantage, because that's a huge thing, is that we're missing out on so much damage from Shizuka not being able to buff our weakness strike that it's actually kind of laughable. And if she didn't actually have live mode, then she wouldn't be on this team. I'd probably bring Dark Milim instead, honestly. But the live mode is important, so it's what we're going to run with. So Rimuru, we're going to get a double stack of him, so we might as well just use him now anyways, because it'll give this turn more magic attack, and it'll just help us hit a little bit harder. And then next turn, when we have alts for almost everybody, we can use the synergy buff as well, and we'll at least have 2 EX alts. So, hooray! Idols, once again being used. Green meta, you know, they'll do well in a green meta, regardless of what it is, as long as you give them time. Like, this is a long-term, like this beatdown battle, long-form fight. Super useful. In a burst setting, I mean, for beatdown battle, I guess, like, they'll work. You're not going to get, like, the 8-turn limit or something, maybe, but you'll certainly not die, which makes this team extremely useful, but also still very limited to units that are never coming back. Just like the Overlord units are never coming back. So it's better to get them now and let them sit in your box and look pretty than to never get them again, except for units that are actually bad, like Albedo. There we go. We hit 1 million, so we did more than the half meta team because this team just has more damage potential. And we took, what, 2 hits of damage? Awesome. Let's move on. Alright, the next team is a much, much older team. It's going to be the first anniversary team. Veldora, Milim, Isis, Rimuru, and Shinsha. The 5th unit slot is taken by Traya, but you could honestly, as long as you have an orange orb changer or some kind of green orb converter, it'll work fine. Because if you don't have access to Traya, like, don't feel too bad. Just bring, like, free-to-play Aaron or free-to-play Sufia, or Space Ranga, Water Soe, Fire Benimaru, the Fire from the movie. Like, there are options for you. You don't need it, but this team does need an orange converter desperately. Isis and Milim cannot handle it by themselves. So here, Isis does have the green buff. We don't actually use it here for some reason because I'm dumb, but hey, it is what it is. We're not starting with the skill point units either, so not too big of an issue. But here, like, this is why you need to bring an orange converter. Specifically this reason, this hand that you're looking at right now, is that if we only had Milim and Isis, like, we would have been shit out of luck. But we do have Traya, who was able to do it, plus we have enough points to really get away with using a bunch of things right here. If you want to play, I guess, RNG dependent, you could take out Traya for another damaging support unit like Octagram Lumi or Light Raphael to get the alt resistance down in the Pierce, because you're already getting crit, you're already getting the magic buff, you're getting the alt buff. My Milim is skill fused, so she's giving all dark allies a 25% attack buff, which if she's not skill fused, she's only giving herself a 15%. So, I mean, there's a little bit of support there. Shinsha will not be able to get maxed out here because her skill needs to go to turn 8 before she gets the extra 20% dark attack and all that. But it is still, like, it's a reasonable buff. And we're going to have enough points to do it because we're sending full hands of greens and we're cycling very quickly because we have Isis. So this hand ended up being really lucky with only 1 orb change, really. And then we're going to start using stacks of Shinsha's debuff, which is going to give us more points on greens, or any orb, and also lowering crit resistance. While Veldora keeps all of our skills nice and cheap, he's giving us a magic attack every single time we use him, and I mean, we're going to look pretty good here. This hand, kind of unfortunate, we don't have another Veldora technically, because the greens were not enough, and look at that hand. Look at this beautiful, beautiful handful of crappy oranges. Well, it'll be okay, right? It'll be okay because we have Traya, and we're just going to yoink Isis out of there. Traya will take that last Isis orb, which leaves us with 3, and then we can use the orb changes, right? Right? Yes, we can, because we can use Traya's self-convert, we can use her own convert, we can then use Milim's convert, and we can take care of all this, and we can just send in all the alts. So it's funky, but you gotta do what you gotta do. Traya's not gonna do a lot of damage here, and we're also not able to reset Traya's convert, so Unfortunate, but we'll have to just make do. We'll get a good amount of points back off of this. And, you know, yeah, 8,500. Excellent damage. 24,000 damage right there. We're looking really good, guys. This is a very old team, though. You gotta understand. It's a very old team. They've been in the general pool for a while, except Traya. You may or may not have pulled them. There are substitutions. Like, you could bring... like I said, like Light Raphael, you could bring any EX character that would buff the team. You could bring the new Shizu, you know, Overlord Shizu. She would be a great asset for this team, because you'd at least be getting the alt resistance down, and you'd have the alt swap ability. But at the same time, it's like a lot of her buff is that weakness strike, which isn't really that useful. If you have Idol Shuna, you could put her in. You know, Dark Rimuru, honestly, is not really doing much. He's one of 2 dark horses for the first Annie. Units that never see the light of day. The other one being stupid Diablo. We won't talk about him. I think I've said enough about how much I dislike that Diablo over the past, you know, year and change or so. But, I mean, this team, it's going to get you a score, just like some of the others. It's not going to do as well as the Gods of Destiny team. It's not going to do as well as the half meta for the Overlord collab. And it doesn't even do as good as the final team after this that we're going to show off, the World of Fantasy, with Frey and Fantasy Milim. But it'll get you something. It'll certainly get you something. So this is the final turn. We have an Isis alt and a Milim alt. I mean, we could have maybe tried to wrangle for a Rimuru alt, but he's an AoE. He wouldn't have done too much. We could have also tried to get the Shinsha alt, but as you see, we're kind of low on points here. We're kind of low on points. Oh, we do have a Shinsha alt, never mind. But, there we go. So 1, 2, 52 points is not enough, but it is what it is. So we are missing the dark buff, unfortunately, because we just didn't have enough points. But it is what it is. We'll use one more stack of the resistance down. So technically, this team could have gotten a higher score had we gotten a little bit better on our point management, and we would have been able to use the dark buff earlier, or, you know, had enough points to actually do it, because I don't think we had the green buff going for a while, because we only got like 92 points off that 6-hand a couple turns ago. Not great, but that puts us at 733, which I guess is about roughly equal to what the Ainsmaru team gave us, with a bunch of free-to-play units. So it's not the worst thing in the world, but it's definitely not the best. But there we go, that's the score, and let's move on to the final team now. Alright, now we're taking it back even further. We're going to use Protector Chloe, who is another green, converter, and stacking character, kind of. She's changing all orange orbs to greens. She's giving a 40% temporary alt buff. She's raising your skill cap by 40. So we're going to build upon that with Octagram Lumi for permanent alt buff, the crit from the hero, Isis, who's going to handle the blue orb changing and green orb buffing, and then we have both of our space Milims here, who will be our quote-unquote damage dealers. Milim has Drago and her attack buff plus the space buff, and she's going to give that space buff to Octagram Milim, who, I mean, I'm not able to use her Pierce buff here, but, you know, in theory, things will work better than this run, because I kind of threw this team together pretty quick. Ideally, you'd want to have 1 or 2 stacks of Lumi, maybe 3 if you can get it. You'll have the crit buff on both Milims, the space buff on both Milims, and then Drago, and then Octagram Milim's Pierce buff. Her little, 15-pointer one, not the big-time 55-point, because that one's pretty much useless, because you are bringing the hero already. But ideally, you'd have 2 of those alts, maybe 3 if you can wrangle the hero's AoE alt on the same turn. That way, everyone has a space buff. But again, you'll have to play around with this team if you want to attempt it. I did not get an ideal run, but I got a run that I needed to record quickly so I could get this video edited and rendered out for tomorrow. So, not the greatest hand right here. We only have 1 orb changer for blue, and we're binded it anyways, so not too big a deal. But this hand is pretty good, because it is all Milim orbs, and they're all oranges, or greens, which means that Chloe will be able to convert those. So we've got now our second stack of Lumi, so an extra 40% ult buff, which will go on top of the 40% that we're already getting from Chloe, which is another 40%. And now we're going to bring in Isis, use her green buff now, and then we'll bring in the hero, I think. Or maybe the hero stays in the back. Let's find out. No, I think we just send it. Okay, yeah, we just send it, which is fine, honestly. But we get a double stack of Chloe, you get alts for Milim and Milim, I guess. And I believe we just kind of send them, because there's no point. But since we don't have a skill reset, I don't want to use their big-time buffs now. We're going to hold that for the nuke turn. I just want to get these alts out here, that way we can get a full hand. So we're going to bring Lumi in for the hero, use the third stack of her alt buff, so we're looking pretty good on that. And then we have this one orange orb hanging around, and we're going to be able to convert that with Chloe, and we're going to rewind here. Now, it's not great to rewind when Isis is not up front, but because, you know, the rewind, you're not guaranteed any green orbs next turn, and if you get any blues, well, you're SOL on that. So we could have played this turn a little bit better, but it is what it is. So we send 2 ults, get some follow-up attacks, and then the rewind will kick in, and then on a good day, we'll get just oranges and greens, but that is not to be the case here. So, look at my 3 blues. So, we're just going to send the 3 blues and pray that next turn, it's just pretty oranges. Which it is. Perfect. So now we have 2 turns left. We're going to get the Milim alts here. We have no hero orbs whatsoever, so there's nothing we can really do about that, unfortunately. So the hero's going to go away. We're going to use the final stack of Lumi, which honestly may have been a mistake here, because I think we needed to use the Isis buff again. But, oh well, because we're a little low on points. 108, maybe the Isis buff was still active, but 138 is not quite enough to do everything that I want to do here, because we're 2 points shy. I think, yeah, 2 points, 110, 30, yeah, 140 points is what we needed. And yeah, we were 2 points. So this could have been a better run here and there. If you had gotten a little bit luckier on the orbs, we would have had a little bit more luck. But we have enough to use the space buff, the crit buff, and the Drago. And so we're only missing Autogram Milim's Pierce buff now. And we have the full 80% from Lumi. So that's 80 plus another 40, so 120% ult damage plus everything else. So I mean, this isn't terrible damage. It's not great damage, but it is what it is. 410, and then Space Milim falls up with 22k. So 448, definitely a lot less than the other teams we've got in this video, but we're using a pretty old team, and my Octagram Milim is still level 80, as she has remained since I first bought her back in December of 2021. So, not a great score, but if it's what you got, then it's what you got. Alright, and the final team is another old team. It's the Light 2.0, the old Bride meta, with Bride, Shizu, Groom, Rimuru, and Bride, Xion, with the hero, Isis yet again, because she is just a godly unit. That's a free-to-play unit. It's still crazy that she's got this much value still. And then old Leon, who's giving the light buff. So, I mean, this team is built on Pierce, and Xion has that kind of same thing that World of Fantasy Milim has, where every time you use a skill, you get a small buff, permanent buff to like your Pierce or your crit. Xion's giving herself 3% Pierce for every skill up to turn 3. Granted, my Xion is skill fused, so she starts with a higher base amount of Pierce than what someone else's Xion will start with, but it's still the same strategy, you just won't do as much. So turn 1, we're going to use the Isis green buff. We want to try and maximize the amount of skills we use in the first 3 turns, because we want to make sure that Xion does enough damage, but I also don't want to screw myself out of using skills later on as well, because we're going to get a couple ults off with this team. So full green hand right here, full green buff. Shizu is converting 3 oranges and 3 blues to 6 greens. Awesome. She's giving a 10% ult buff, which, you know, fine, whatever. But then she's also giving the Pierce rate, which also the rate stacks up with how many skills you use. So you have to use a few in order for her to actually guarantee that you're going to get the Pierce. So here, we'll use just some random orb changes. We'll also use Rimuru's Pierce resistance down, which has the added side effect of giving you extra ult gauge on greens. And then, we're not going to use Shion's skill quite yet. We'll use Shizu to give ourselves the Pierce, and we should be looking close to like 80-95% for almost guaranteed Pierce right here. Yeah, almost every hit is a Pierce, so we're looking good. This gets us alts for, I think, all 3 of them. Oh, no, okay. It gets us an EX alt for Rimuru, even though he's not capable of doing such thing. Oh, there we go. All right. We got the alt anyways from the trait. So, awesome. So we'll use the light buff here. We'll use Shion's buff. This is turn 3? Yeah, turn 3. So this is the last turn we have to use skills to be able to buff Shion's Pierce rate up. And so we're going to use it here. So Leon is AoE, 24k. All right, awesome. Rimuru is single target, 53k. He still has a Pierce resistance down debuff as well on the enemy. 118k for Shion, looks pretty good. And now that we're halfway done with the fight, what we're wanting to do now is build up enough points, build up an ult for Shion, and be able to use the Leon buff on both Rimuru and Shion, send them away, and then on the final turn, we'll bring them both back and give them the hero buff as well, so they'll have everything available to them. So another green buff just to make sure it doesn't run out, and then the hero will come in and we will rewind. So we're going to send the Rimuru ult because we're going to get it back, obviously, because we've got 2 more Rimuru orbs that are going to be full buffed here as well. Plus we'll have whatever the rewind turn gives us, and we'll be looking pretty good. So 28k, alright, whatever. And then the follow-up attacks, Shion still does, okay damage here. 15k for how old she is. We're already at 400,000. So I mean, I think we're already gonna do more than the last team. And then look at that. We don't need to use the orb change anymore because we're on turn 4 technically. So using skills at this point would not buff Shion's Pierce rate anymore. So we're just gonna use Shizu because we're gonna get it all back anyways. So we don't need to worry about it. We can use an orb change though just to buff up our damage. Green damage by 15%, which does help out, a little bit. So there we go. We got a double Shizu Protector, 100 points, alts for both Rimuru and Shion, and instead of what I said earlier, we're going to give them the crit buff now, because the hero's up here, not Leon. But then we'll be able to hold the crit on them for the next turn, and we'll have enough points to also use Shion's buff again. So we're up to 61% Pierce power on her. Again, if you're not skill fused, you're going to have less than that, but still follow the same example that I'm setting. And then we'll bring Isis in, and we'll bring Leon in for Shion. That way, when we send this full 600 greens, we'll have enough points on the final turn to use the light buff from Leon, because that's now 75 points. That's pretty much the only thing we're going to be able to use that turn. But that means that Shion is full buffed. She'll have crit, she'll have light, and she'll have her own attack and pierce buff. So, it'll look okay. And that will do it for the boss battle videos for Jubilee 34 Blitz. Hopefully you guys were able to increase your score by using, either this video or the previous video that had the sweaty tryhard strats. Let me know if it helped you out, and also in the comments put it if you used a different team that people may be able to use to increase their score. So here we use the light buff, we use Shizu one last time, and then we're going to go ahead and nuke. But I'm not quite sure if I enjoy having 2 Jubilees a month. I would have rather them just taken the crystals out of Jubilee Blitz when it ended in 2022 and put them into Ranked Valor, and then, just given us a raid right here, because raids are much easier to record, because we don't have to care about normal battles. I don't need to do like 8 teams, 12 teams for that. We just have to do the boss battle. 121 right there for Shion, pretty good. And then her final hit does 51k with crit and pierce, and we're 768. It's not bad. So there we go. That is the final team for normal battle, or for boss battle, and I hope you guys learned something. But that's it from me, guys. Take it easy, and I will see you all later.